Hi, my name is Shane Willits, and I work at Utah Behavior Services located in Lehi, Utah. I am a registered behavior technician and a behavior intern. I am also a graduate student at Florida Institute of Technology studying applied behavior analysis. And basically, the reason that I'm putting together this video training class thing is because I know that applied behavior analysis and the research that has gone into this field has developed specific technologies and tools that we can use to change behavior and do so in a way that's ethical and socially significant. But it really comes in handy for kids that maybe we struggle with a little bit more. I know I have a sister with what's known as reactive attachment disorder. If you know anything about it, it comes with a whole set of behavior deficits. I also work with children on the autism spectrum, and they're awesome, but I mean, a lot of them do struggle in the sense that maybe they can't communicate what they want the way that we can. And so the way that they start communicating, or the way that they feel like they can get their emotions and their thoughts across, is through means of maybe aggression, tantrums, screaming. I mean, we see it all the time. And we don't just see it with children on the spectrum, of course. I mean, we see it in typically developing children all the time. I mean, if there's something that they can't express, it's really easy to resort to screaming. It's really easy for me to resort to screaming and maybe other maladaptive behaviors. So anyway, using the research and the data that has been thrown into this field of applied behavior analysis, I've come up with about 4 tools that I think that every RBT, that's what I do, parent, aunt, uncle, friend, sibling, just really easy tools that we can use to help our kiddos maybe gain our attention, or tell us what they need, or communicate in a way that will simultaneously decrease maybe the amount of tantrums and aggressions and screaming. Disclaimer, I'm not a parent. My only experience comes with working with children in a more clinical setting and siblings. But the research has proven that this stuff works, and that's why I'm so passionate about it. I love science, and I love math, and I love data, and I love facts, and it's just awesome. And so when I was introduced to this field, and I realized that every single tool and piece of technology that they provide us with to help these children accomplish significant goals and outcomes, and to help them become independent, and anyway, to know that these tools are coming from data, are coming from research, and coming from facts, it really gave me something to throw myself into, because there's nothing safer than the facts. So let's get started. So I'm going to go ahead and screen share, pull up my PowerPoint here. So this all works just fine. Okay, perfect. So like I said, this is a presentation about 4 tools that I think could make a huge impact in the home, is basically what that is. So ABA tools for every caregiver's tool belt. So throughout this class, I do want you thinking about, in your home, where are you seeing problems? Where are you seeing the most issues occurring? Is it at grocery stores? Is it when it's time to clean up? Is it when you're telling them to do their homework? Is it when if they have to share a toy with a sibling? Is it when they're hungry? Is it when they're tired? Is it when they're trying to communicate something to you and they can't? So obviously every situation is so different. Every kid is so different. Every parent is so different. Every house is so different. So yes, these are 4 tools, but while we're going through this, I really want you thinking about specifically how this might apply in your situation. And there's a bit of a just a comment later in the presentation, but I'll say it here. Each one of your kiddos has an awesome clinician. And I can tell you that they stress themselves out and they work so hard and they're reading articles all the time and they really are so invested in your kids. So if you do have any questions about how these specific tools can apply in your specific situation to your very specific child, please contact them. They would love it and they have all the answers. So, and if they don't, they're gonna dive into the research, and that's what I love. But anyway, let's go. So my example that I'm going to use throughout this class is something very common that occurs with typical kids, anyone, really anyone, even with me. If my husband tells me I can't have ice cream, it happens, okay? So here it is. Mom or dad say no to the candy bar at the grocery store. In response, the kiddo starts screaming, crying, flopping on the floor, throwing an awesome tantrum. So here I've got 4 different possible ways that we could respond as caregivers. Not all of them are correct, and I just want you to start thinking about which one you might think we should take, okay? So 3 of these are very incorrect. So first one, okay, stop screaming, you can have the candy, okay? If you stop screaming, I'll give you the candy. Or you said no, so we follow through, ignore the screaming, and do not provide the candy. D, if you stop screaming for the rest of the trip, you can have the candy, okay? So in 3 of these situations, maybe the response wasn't ideal, is what I'll say. So tool number 1 is reinforcement. So we hear this word a lot. A common word that I will replace is reward because it's easy. Reinforcement is a consequence or anything that comes after a behavior that will increase that behavior happening in the future. This means that if the kid starts screaming in the grocery store and I say, okay, fine, you can have the candy, then I've just given them a reward after they were screaming. This means that I just reinforced the screaming. And according to this definition, that means that it's the screaming that will increase in the future. So if we want screaming to increase in the future at grocery stores, we provide the candy after they scream, okay? Obviously, we don't want to do that, and we'll talk about maybe other possibilities. So we need to focus on when we're giving a piece of candy or a reward or attention or reinforcement, we need to focus on the behaviors that we want to see increased. So at the grocery store specifically, I want to see my kiddo or my client holding onto the cart, holding my hand, staying with me. I want them to not be screaming. I want them, if they ask me for a candy and I say no, I want them to be like, okay, or oh, that sucks, but then move on, right? We don't need a huge tantrum. So focus on a behavior that you want to see increased, and then making sure that we're only providing the reward after those awesome behaviors. Because if we're providing the reward after the not awesome behaviors, like the screaming and the hitting and the throwing themselves on the floor, then that's what's going to be increased, and that's what we do not want. So as you can see here, whatever you want to see increase should be immediately followed by reinforcement. Okay. Down here, it's just basically saying that this equation also does apply to poor behaviors. So if you want to see screaming increase, we'll provide that reinforcement. If we want to see them accepting no or staying with mom in the grocery store without screaming, that's what we're going to reinforce. Okay. There are two types of reinforcement. There's positive and negative. So reinforcement is anything that will increase behavior, okay? Positive really just means adding. So if you're adding anything to the environment that will increase that behavior, that is positive reinforcement. This is probably the most common. This is the candy, the toys, the hug, like I'm giving you a hug. I'm adding a hug to your environment. This is even just my words. Nice job, dude. You're killing it. You're doing awesome. Hey, thanks for staying with me. Thanks for being okay when I say no. So anything that I add, it could be my voice, it can be gestures, it can be physical, it can be tangible, like toys and candy. So anything that's added. I did say, think about adding, addition, giving, it's a plus sign, right? So positive reinforcement is anything that's added. Okay. The most common form of positive reinforcement is praise. It's also the easiest. However, there is a way to do this in a way that is most effective. So I could be like, killing it, dude, right? But what are they killing it at? Like, what are they doing awesome? We're like, awesome, dude. What's awesome? They don't know. So you want to be specific. So here it is. So 4 kind of steps to this. We're going to select the behavior. So in my scenario, the kid is holding my hand in the grocery store the whole time. He's just staying with me. He's holding my hand. So this is the behavior that I want to keep increasing, okay? So if he is holding my hand, I'm going to say, nice job. And I'm not going to do it like, nice job, dude, killing it. I'm going to be enthusiastic about it. I'm like, dude, you're awesome. Hey, thank you so much, right? Thank you for what? So now step number 3, we have to state exactly what's being praised so they know exactly why I'm loving on them, okay? So I'm going to hold their hand. That's the behavior I want to see increased. I'm going to be super happy about it. I'm going to tell them, hey, thank you so much for holding my hand. Dude, you are doing awesome holding my hand. We are doing so awesome holding hands in the grocery store. Like, it's very specific. It's upbeat. And then I can add, I love this. I do lots of high fives, lots of fist bumps, parents, hugs, kisses, thumbs up. We're going to give it to them all. So for you guys are listening and paying attention. Thank you so much. So guys, thank you so much for listening and paying attention. It really means a lot to me. Nice job. And here's my nonverbal gesture. Okay. Okay. So those are just like 4 easy ways to make praise the most effective it can be, because praise is just so easy to be like, nice job, but to do it upbeat and to tell them exactly why they're being praised. Dude, you are listening to this class. That is so awesome, right? Lots of high fives, lots of fist bumps. Mom and dad, hugs, kisses. Awesome. Okay. The second form of reinforcement is negative reinforcement. So this is still a good thing. This is still going to increase behavior. So when you're talking about taking away something that's good, taking away something that's also going to increase behavior, you're probably going to take away, I wrote aversive stimulus. An aversive stimulus is something that is annoying, irritating, uncomfortable, maybe it's painful. So if I have a headache, I'm probably going to take some Tylenol or some ibuprofen, maybe drink a Diet Coke because caffeine always helps my headaches. And that will take away that aversive stimulus, which would be the headache, right? So again, we're not talking about negative in the sense that you're spanking or telling them mean things. This is still a good thing. So you're taking away the bad things to make it a good situation for them. So if a kid's at the dinner table and you've asked them to take 5 bites of their food, okay, of their vegetables, they take the 5 bites, and the way that you're going to reinforce those 5 bites or provide the reward for those 5 bites is by taking the rest of the broccoli away. You take the rest of the food away, okay? You're going to take the aversive stimulus, which in this case is broccoli. You're going to take it away from them. And they're going to think in their head, hey, I took 5 bites and then the rest just disappeared. That's awesome. I'm going to take 5 bites in the future. Hence why it's still reinforcement, because it's going to increase eating 5 bites of broccoli in the future. Okay. So again, negative just means taking it away. We're going to take something bad away to make their situation better. So giving them a break from homework, giving them a break from the table in classroom. I cook really poorly, so I'm going to open all the doors and windows, and the smoke is going to go away, and that's going to be awesome for me, and that's going to reinforce my opening door behavior, okay? Even just turning off loud noises, and maybe you're fanning the fire alarm so it stops ringing. I don't know, beeping. So then we're going to take away that really annoying sound, and that's going to reinforce my waving behavior. Okay. So, nice. Anyway, I hope that makes sense. So just quick recap, reinforcement is anything, any stimulus, but anything that comes after a behavior that will increase that behavior. Okay. So they do something, and you're going to change the environment, and it's going to increase that behavior. So reinforcement is anything that increases behavior. Awesome. Positive just means it's added. So if I want to see an increase of hand holding at the store, I'm going to add praise. I'm going to add toys. I'm going to add a hug. I'm going to add something to their environment that says that was awesome, and that's going to increase hand holding behavior. Negative reinforcement, again, we're still increasing behavior, but we're going to take away the bad from the environment, the aversive stimulus. Okay. So this kind of brings me to a really, really, really important note of bribery. We talk about this a lot in my clinic. So what's the difference between reinforcement and bribery? Okay. So I didn't know the best way to communicate this, so I went to the professionals and I did my own little bit of research. And bribery, as described by Dr. Mary Barbara, BCBA, it's very unplanned and reaction driven. Okay, so what she means by this is, let's go back to the grocery store. I said no to a piece of candy, and now the kid is screaming and tantruming in the middle of the aisle. It would be unplanned and very reaction driven if I said, okay, fine, you win. You can have the candy bar, right? That would be very unplanned and reaction driven. So like it says, this means that when a problem behavior arises, we choose to bring out the reward, the candy bar in this situation, to get the child to stop engaging in problem behavior, screaming. Hence, it's unplanned. It's an unplanned response to their problem behavior, okay? So let's look at this. We have a problem behavior of screaming, and we immediately give them the candy bar to kind of get them to be quiet or stop screaming, okay? But what have we done? We have now reinforced screaming. And that is not what we want. That is the opposite of what we want, because no parent, caregiver, RBT, anybody wants an increase of screaming behavior, okay? So we've now just accidentally, by using bribery to get the kid to stop screaming, by saying, okay, you can have the candy, stop screaming, we have now reinforced screaming. And now they know that in the grocery store, even if mom says no to a candy bar, 1, she doesn't actually mean no, and 2, if I scream loud enough and long enough, I'm going to get my candy bar, okay? Great. So, the opposite of reinforcement is punishment. We don't use this a lot, so I'm not going to spend a whole ton of time on it. Punishment is any stimulus, anything in the environment that follows a behavior that will decrease behavior in the future. Okay, so just like anything, any stimulus, change in the environment that follows behavior that increases behavior is reinforcement. Anything that decreases behavior is punishment. So obviously positive still means adding. In this situation, if I'm going to add something that's going to decrease behavior, I'm going to probably add an aversive stimulus. Okay, so this could be a loud noise. This is where we would typically thinking of reprimands, spanking, anything like that, right? This is where we think of that. So punishment we don't typically use. Actually, we don't use, because there are other tools, and we'll talk about that. But I just wanted to mention the difference between reinforcement and punishment, because I thought that was important. Again, negative just means taking away. So taking away something that's awesome in order to decrease behavior. So negative punishment would probably be like timeout. Okay, I'm going to take you away from the video games, the TV, the toys. And you don't get that anymore because you were naughty. Okay, it will decrease behavior. But it's taking something desired or appetitive following response. Okay, so we've talked about reinforcement. Reinforcement will forever be my number one go-to tool. Okay, if nothing else, take reinforcement home with you. That is how we increase behavior. Okay. So now we do need to kind of talk about how are we going to get rid of the problem behaviors, right? So that brings in number 2, extinction. So I used a pretty dumb scenario or parallel where just like as we extinguish fires by taking away what fuels it, oxygen, okay, we can extinguish behaviors by taking away what fuels that. Okay, we'll talk about. So extinction is any reinforcement, so a stimulus that increases behavior. So any reinforcement for a problem behavior is discontinued in order to decrease and even eliminate the reoccurrence of that behavior in the future. Okay. So we're not adding punishment, we're just not going to reinforce it. Okay. So there's a difference between punishing behavior and just totally blocking any consequence at all. Okay. So that's more what's happening, is we're not going to provide any consequence, good or bad. We're just not going to do anything. That sounds silly when I say that. Okay. But if reinforcement is what's increasing the behavior, we're going to block what's happening so that the behavior is no longer being fueled by those rewards. Okay. So here we've got our original equation. Behavior is followed by reinforcement is going to lead to more behavior. In this situation, problem behavior. Okay. So we're going to cut off the reinforcement and we're going to end up with no problem behavior. Okay. That's very ideal. But we are going to see decreases and it's going to be awesome. So how do we know what to extinguish? Lots of kids do different behaviors or engage in different behaviors to get something out of it specifically. We do run analyses on these behaviors to see kind of when we get a new client who is engaging in SIB, which is self-injurious behavior. So maybe they're hitting themselves a lot, okay? We're gonna run an FA and kind of see why. Or maybe a kiddo is throwing chairs against the wall or pushing staff. We're gonna run an analysis to see why, okay? Are they throwing chairs because they want your attention? Are they throwing chairs because you said for access, because you said no to a video game? Are they throwing chairs to get out of a homework assignment or escape? Sensory we won't super dive into. That one's a bit more complicated. But so let's start with attention, okay? So attention can be either good or bad. Even if it's a reprimand, if I'm saying, hey, stop throwing that chair, that could still be reinforcing to them. That could still be enough to fuel a fire. And they're going to keep throwing that chair at the wall. Okay. We see this with teenagers all the time. When I was a teenager, I was screaming and doing things that I shouldn't have been because I wanted attention. Okay. It wasn't ever good attention. It wasn't, nice job, Shane, for making stupid decisions. That's awesome. No, it was more like, that's stupid. You're grounded, right? And it was more on the reprimand side, but it was still attention, and that was fueling my behavior. Okay. Access is what we'd probably see in that grocery store. They're going to have tantrums or behaviors or aggressions because they want something. They want to gain access to something like a toy or a treat or video games or something like that. Okay. The last one we'll really dive into is escape. This one's very common in school settings. Actually, it's really common everywhere. I don't know why I just said school settings, but if you're giving them homework, chores, things to do, because that's what caregivers do. We give children responsibilities so they can learn and grow and be independent. They might engage in tantrum or aggression behavior to get out of it. If I ask a kid to do a chore and he starts trying to hit me, then I might be like, okay, fine. You don't have to do that chore. Okay, and then they just escaped, and again, that reinforced their hitting me behavior. Okay. So those are the ones we're going to really focus on, are attention, access, and escape. There is a sensory aspect to it. This just basically means, and this comes a lot with children on the autism spectrum, where something is reinforcing by itself. So maybe there's a kid that, again, SIBs, is hitting himself, and that might feel really good to him. Okay? That might make him feel just as good as sneezing feels to me. Sneezing feels really good. It's really annoying if you can't have a sneeze, okay? For some children on the spectrum, that's what like hitting yourself looks like. They need it. It feels good. It's almost a coping mechanism. So like I said, they're engaging in a problem behavior, because smacking yourself in the head repeatedly is a problem behavior that can result in some long-term damage, but it's making them feel good. So it's going to reinforce that smacking behavior, okay? So for attention, we're going to use specific extinction for attention-based behavior, okay? So if a kid is screaming because he wants your attention, what should we not give? We should not give attention. We should not fuel that fire. I think that's pretty straightforward, okay? What this looks like is, as you can see, I did some reading with Dr. Glenn Latham, who wrote a book called Power of Positive Parenting, and he talks a ton about this. But basically, you just gotta keep it straight, right? So you're not gonna bring in punishment. You're not gonna be like, change your face, be angry. No, you're gonna act like this didn't faze you at all. You have a completely straight face. Straight face. You're gonna have like a completely neutral tone. So I'm not gonna be enthusiastic, but I'm also not gonna be like angry, okay? Then you're gonna walk away. That's my favorite. Or look away or do something else. Or I might pick up my phone and act like I'm doing something different. I'm just gonna act like that this did not even faze me at all, okay? Because remember, even bad attention, such as reprimands, can reinforce that attention-seeking behavior. I think that one's probably the most straightforward. If they're doing something bad because they want your attention, ignore it. Access. If they are engaging in tantrums and aggression because they want a candy or toy, what are we not going to do? We are not going to give them toys and candy. Again, We're not going to punish the behavior. I'm not going to smack them upside the head. I'm not going to tell them, stop screaming. I'm not going to do any of that. I'm just not going to give any kind of reinforcement. Again, I'm going to ignore, ignore, ignore. Screaming is not how you're going to get this toy from me, okay? So again, we are, oh, I forgot to mention that. So here I provided an example. We can give reinforcement, but only when they're asking for that toy appropriately. So they're screaming, they're hitting me, whatever, because they want the toy. So I'm not going to give the toy. Maybe I wait and wait and wait, and that's fine. Waiting is fine. But what if they say, Miss Shane, can I have the toy? Yes, you may have all the toys in the world. What else can I give you when you're asking me like this, right? So it's not that we're just ignoring them all the time. We're just waiting for them, and we're waiting for the opportunity to reinforce the behaviors we want to see. So in this case, can I have the toy? A lot of kids maybe can't talk. I work with a lot of kids that are still working on communication skills and building a vocabulary. Maybe they point to the toy. That works! Pointing to the toy that's in my hand is way better than, ah, right? Okay. So looking for opportunities to reinforce awesome behaviors. But in this case, extinction, because we're talking about extinction, we are not going to give the toy if they're engaging in problem behavior. Last one we'll talk about is escape. I see this a lot when I work in school settings. This one is, again, I always say ignore, ignore, ignore. So this is me giving them, let's say I need them to write the alphabet, or I need them to trace their name. And they are going to try and swipe everything off my table. They might try to push me away. They might start screaming. They might just be crying. They might try to like get away from the table and run away. These are all very typical. But what are you not gonna do? You're not gonna take that task away. So even if they are screaming, you might wait for them to calm down, but you'd be like, okay, let me know when you're ready. Let me know when you're ready to do 2 problems. Let me know when you're ready to take 2 bites of your broccoli. And then we wait and we ignore. And again, we're bringing back that neutral face, neutral tone of voice, and we wait. And occasionally I might say, okay, let me know when you're ready. Okay. Where I see the biggest issues with this is, for example, sometimes we will go work in schools, okay? And our kids are so smart. Our kids are so smart. And it's frustrating. But they know that maybe with Shane, I'm going to have to answer these 5 questions before I leave the table. But with this person who maybe isn't trained or doesn't know how to run extinction procedures, if I scream loud enough, this person's gonna let me take a break. This person's gonna take away this evil homework from me. It happens all the time. Mainly, I mean, it's not their fault. A lot of times it's because they're dealing with other students. At home, it's probably because you're dealing with other kids and a life. And I get paid to do this, right? This is my job to run these procedures, but is not, I mean, you have lives and we understand that. And that's where this kind of becomes tricky. But the biggest issue we see is parents giving in, teachers giving in, RBTs sometimes give in because we're not perfect, right? And we say, okay, fine, you can have a break. But what have we done? We've just reinforced that escape-based problem behavior. So it's hard, and I get it, and I'm speaking in very ideal terms, and I understand that. And again, if you do have any questions about how to specify to your specific situation, please contact your clinician because they're very smart and I'm sure they would have some ideas. So now that I've just taught you different ways to ignore children, we're going to talk about What's next? Like I said, we really don't just sit there in 3-hour clinical sessions just ignoring your child, I promise. So now what? Okay. So my third tool, it's called differential reinforcement, which is a big term for saying I'm going to pick a behavior that I want to see increase, and I'm going to reinforce it like crazy. And then I'm going to also see all of the behaviors that I don't want to see, like the tantrums and the aggression, and I'm going to put it on extinction. So what differential reinforcement is it's this happy marriage between reinforcement and extinction. So you've already learned tool number 1, reinforcement. You've already learned tool number 2, extinction. We're going to put them together and we're going to make a happy family, and we are going to see behavior change, and it's going to be awesome. Okay? There's a lot of different forms of differential reinforcement. I should start there. The two that I think are most useful for a tool belt, for a caregiving tool belt or whatever, is a DRO and a DRA, and we'll talk about it. So first, our DRO, it's differential behavior or reinforcement for other behavior. I also like to think the O represents omission or absence of the problem behavior. So this is basically if your kid is not screaming, reinforce it and say, oh, nice job for not screaming. Thanks for having a calm voice. Actually, you probably wouldn't say for not screaming, because then you just reminded them to scream. But I would probably say, thank you for having such a calm voice and a calm body. Okay? If it's a kid that's constantly smacking himself in the head, and he stops for 2 seconds, you say, oh, thank you for having soft hands. Okay? So we're going to reinforce any behavior, that's good, that's not the problem behavior. So we're reinforcing the omission or the absence of problem behavior. Okay? So what we're putting on extinction is the screaming, the aggression, the tantrum. We're going to ignore all of those, okay? And then we're going to go ahead and reinforce everything else, okay? So when they're not screaming, nice job for having a calm voice. When they're not smacking me, thank you for having soft hands. Thanks for being my friend. Thanks for treating me like I'm a friend. Same with tantrums. Nice job for completing that task. Nice job for doing your chore. Nice job for eating 1 bite. Nice job for picking up the piece of broccoli. Maybe they haven't eaten it yet. We're working on it. But maybe they picked it up. That's still an improvement from screaming and tantruming. So nice job for picking up that piece of broccoli. Okay. Basically, this is, we're going to ignore the problem behaviors, put it on extinction, as we've already discussed, and we're going to reinforce all of the behaviors we do want to see. Okay. Again, we're being very specific about what we're reinforcing. We're using in a very enthusiastic tone of voice. We're going to give them some thumbs up, some high fives, some hugs, kisses. But we really need to focus on the behaviors we want to see increased. Okay? Wonderful. Number 2, differential reinforcement of alternative behavior, or a DRA. This is the second and last different form of differential reinforcement we'll talk about. So this is specifically about replacement behavior or alternative behavior. So for example, when I talked about getting the toy, when we were talking about access-based behavior, I'm going to ignore the screaming and the hitting. Maybe they want my toy. It's a super awesome toy. It's Sonic the Hedgehog. And they're screaming and they're trying to fight me for it. And they're trying to rip it out of my hands. I'm going to ignore that. I'm going to put that on extinction, okay? And then just like we've already talked about, I'm going to reinforce any alternative way to get that toy. That's more appropriate, right? So are they getting my attention? Excuse me, Miss Shane? Let me give you all the attention you need. Shane, can I talk to you? Yes, you can. You know, are they using their words? Are they pointing for things when they're demanding for it? Maybe they can't say water, but they can point to the water bottle, okay? And I'm going to reinforce that. That's great replacement behavior, okay? Again, accepting no to the candy bar. If I said no to a candy bar and they're like, okay. Dude, you are awesome. Thanks for being okay when I said no. Okay. Okay, and then with tasks, we talked about escape behavior. So if they're trying to run away or push you or scream to get out of a task, we're going to ignore it, put it on extinction. But if they're asking me for a break, can I have a break? Okay, how about 1 minute? No, I don't want 1 minute. Okay, do you want 1 minute break or a 2-minute break? Okay, fine, I'll have a 2-minute break. But they're talking to me, and that is great replacement or alternative behavior. And I'm going to reinforce the crap out of that, okay? So again, we have other behavior. So reinforcing the absence of that behavior, the omission of that problem behavior. Again, we're still ignoring the problem behavior, but we're going to reinforce when they're not doing that, okay? A DRA, again, alternative behavior. So this one we're getting a bit more specific. Are they gaining my attention appropriately? Are they asking for my toys appropriately? Are they asking for a break from a task appropriately? Maybe they're playing video games and you're like, hey dude, time for chores. Let's go clean our room. And they're like, no! Again, ignore it. And I say, Mom, can I have 2 more minutes? Okay, how about 1 more minute and we can compromise, okay? And then I'm gonna reinforce that. I'm gonna reinforce that form of communication and compromise. Okay, because that's a great replacement behavior. Okay, so far we have talked about, that is I have to correct that in my slide. There's actually only 1 more tool left. I said there was 4. There are only 4, I promise. But so far, just to recap, we've talked about reinforcement, increasing awesome behaviors we want to see, extinction, not giving reinforcement for behaviors that we don't want to see anymore, and then combining the two, differential reinforcement, where we're going to put problem behaviors on extinction and reinforce other behaviors, or specifically alternative behaviors. So this last tool is really important for general compliance. I really like this in my work because we deal with it all the time with, again, children with diagnosed behavior problems, typically developing problems. We see it with everyone. I see it with my freaking husband, right? I mean, we see that we need a tool to increase compliance, okay? So that's what this is going to talk about. And I was going to do 2 other tools, but I wanted to keep it simple, so I have to go back and change this PowerPoint for you, but I will. So this last very important tool that has been a life changer in my work is called the high probability sequence, okay? So again, we're bringing in reinforcement. That's the basis of all things awesome, in my opinion, okay? Also, who doesn't love reinforcement? Literally, I mean, that's the definition. I mean, like, it's something that's good, that's going to increase behavior. So everybody loves reinforcement, okay? But first, some definitions, okay? So we have low probability behavior and high probability behavior. Again, high P, low P. High probability, low probability. High probability behaviors are things that we are very likely to see in our kids. So maybe things that are easier, maybe things they like to do, maybe a combination of both. These are behaviors that we know that they can do easily, and there's a high probability of them complying to. And what these are very easy opportunities to gain reinforcement. Okay, this is really important to know. We're going to give them lots of super, super easy opportunities to gain reinforcement, praise, candy, toys, breaks, whatever they need, okay? And it's a high probability. Okay, so we'll get to that. Low probability behaviors are behaviors that we know that they might struggle with, like turning the video games off, cleaning up, transitioning, eating broccoli, completing a homework assignment, going to class, getting in the car to go to school, getting up in the morning, getting dressed. Maybe these are things that are really hard, and you know that it's a low probability because maybe you've had to fight them on it before. Maybe it's a daily occurrence where you know this kid is just not going to wake up on time. You know that this kid is not going to take 5 bites of broccoli. Maybe it's because it's just harder. Maybe they haven't fully developed that skill to mastery yet. They're not quite fluent in that skill. So it's just harder. And that makes it not awesome. I mean, it's not always awesome doing hard things. So another name for a high probability sequence is called behavior momentum. And I like the word momentum because that's exactly what's happening, okay? So we're gonna get the ball rolling. Think in physics here. Getting the ball rolling with some high P tasks. So if I know that I'm about to ask Joe is a random person, don't worry. If I'm gonna ask Joe to have 5 bites of broccoli, and I know that that is something that is super hard for him, okay? Maybe I'm gonna ask him to have a bite of a cheese stick. They do. So I ask him, he likes cheese sticks. Cheese sticks are fine. Everybody likes cheese sticks. So he has a bite of a cheese stick. And I'm like, dude, nice job eating your cheese stick. Okay, so that's one. Okay, take a lick of your yogurt. He licks his yogurt. Thanks for eating your yogurt. Nice job. And then I say, oh, dude, give me a high five. And he gives me a high five. Those are really easy for him. Cheese sticks are fine. Yogurt's fine. High fives are awesome. I knew that he would comply to those, okay? And after every single high P task that I gave him lots of reinforcement. Thank you for eating your cheese stick. Dude, you just had yogurt. That's awesome. Thanks for the high five. That made me feel so good, okay? And then here it goes. Okay, take 1 bite of broccoli. Again. So the idea behind this is that we've built momentum. I'm like, nice job, nice job, nice job. And it's building up, and he does this awesome thing. He takes the bite of broccoli, and I'm like, yes, you ate broccoli. And I'm going to explode, okay? So back to my definitions here before I get too crazy, is yes, we're going back to building momentum using reinforcement for high P behaviors. And the caregiver will provide a reinforcer following every single high P task and then present the low P task. And I said about 3 to 5. That's really up to you. I usually do about 3. Make sure you're giving lots of praise and reinforcement to the child for complying to the low P task. So obviously, I'm going to give more praise and reinforcement for the low P than I did for the high P. So thanks for eating your cheese stick. Nice job having your yogurt. Thanks for the high five, dude. You ate broccoli! That's awesome! Right? Okay. So we're just making sure we're reinforcing everything. And then when it gets to that low P behavior of the broccoli, you are going to give them all of the love and attention and maybe a bite of cookie that they were working for or some fruit snacks that they were working for. We're going to give it all, okay? Just some quick examples of a high P. We've already kind of talked about this, but do this. Do this. Do this. Touch head. Touch toy. Things that are really easy. Hey, what color is this? What color is this? Touch my water bottle. That works too. Okay, let's count to 5. For some kids, that might be hard. Again, if you don't know, which I assume you will, talk to the clinician. They have lots of ideas because they do this every day professionally, okay? Some low P behaviors for me, it was cleaning my room. That was always a very low probability behavior growing up. Still is. Come here. Maybe you're at the grocery store and they're across the way, or maybe they're on the other side of the house. Hey, Johnny, come here. That's really hard for a lot of people. It's really hard for just about everyone. Take a bite of a non-preferred food like broccoli. Transitioning, come join the family, put the video games away, things like that. Okay. So just a couple of notes. It is important to note that these are highly dependent on the child's abilities, likes, and dislikes. So maybe come here is really easy for one kid. Maybe that's their high P behavior, but maybe a low P behavior is coming here. Maybe do this is a high P for a lot of people. Do this, super easy, right? But not for everybody. So maybe that's a low P. So I gave some examples, but it really is so specific to your individual situation. Maybe giving high fives is super aversive. Maybe they really hate giving high fives. So you probably wouldn't use that as a high P. So again, it all goes back to your individual child's abilities, likes, and dislikes, okay? And again, here's that, I'm just reiterating, if you need suggestions to use at home, contact the clinician. They're geniuses, mad geniuses. Last recap, okay? Reinforcement. We're gonna do it all the freaking time, okay? It doesn't have to be huge. Hey, thanks for putting your fork in the dishwasher. Thanks for giving me that hug. That was so nice, right? It can be so easy, so often. We are going to do it immediately after the behavior we want to see, okay? Anything you want to see increased, reinforce it. Provide some praise, but it has to be right after the behavior. So immediate, enthusiastic, and very specific. Remember, we are going to ignore, and place any problem behaviors on extinction. So if they're screaming at you, ignore it. If they are hitting you, walk away. You can even protect yourself and block them from hitting you, but keep a straight face. Have a very neutral tone. Okay? Ignore. Super important. Differential reinforcement, this is just when we are combining those two. We talked about other behavior, DROs. DRO is other or omission. So reinforcing just when they're not doing that problem behavior. When they're not smacking themselves, reinforce. When they're not throwing chairs at you, reinforce. When they're not screaming, reinforce. Okay? The other one was a DRA of alternative behavior, and that's being more specific. So they want my toy, and instead of, I'm going to ignore the screaming or the grabbing, and I'm going to reinforce, hey, mom, can I have that toy? Heck yeah, kiddo, I love you. Again, I'm not a parent, but. Okay, tool number 4. And this was more about compliance. It's a high probability sequence or behavior momentum. If you need to remember that word, remember momentum, because I really, really like that word. This is where we're giving 3 to 5 really easy or preferred tasks almost. Super easy things like do this, give mom a high five, right? And we're gonna reinforce everything. Thanks for giving me a high five. Thanks for doing this. That was awesome. You just touched your head. Before we give them that low P task or the low probability task of eating a piece of broccoli, shutting the video games off, doing a chore, etc. If you do have any questions or comments or concerns, I am going to actually leave this up here. This is my email. You are more technology is hard. Okay, you are more than welcome to contact me and email me. If you have any questions about how these tools can apply to your specific situation, you can email me. I might actually contact the supervisor myself, your specific clinician. But yeah, it's awesome. And again, I know how ideal this is. You know, just ignore the problem behavior. I get that it doesn't work out perfectly like that. The objective of this presentation was to give a base to get some very basic tools into your tool belt. But ask all of the questions. Ask how it would specifically apply in your household. And yeah, thank you so much. Thanks so much for, here's my reinforcement. Thanks so much for listening to me, guys. It was awesome. But like I said, contact me with questions, comments, concerns. If you hated this, let me know. If you loved it, let me know. If you have any questions, let me know. That's why I'm here. Thank you guys so much. And